I see that people are joining, so I'm waiting for a few seconds. All right, so good morning, good afternoon, good evening, friends, sisters, brothers. Greetings of love, compassion, blessings. Greetings to all of you. Thank you very much for joining us today in this special session of the Faith for Earth dialogue. We are very delighted that we are talking about a subject that has been overlooked for so many years, although it has been practiced for centuries. And it is a pleasure to include it as part of the Faith for Earth dialogue. We are, I believe, in the 10th day of our dialogue series. We have blissfully, with the blessings of God, have engaged with us more than 660 registered participants. This is a historic moment. I keep saying it, but it is. We're very delighted that the faith community, not only the faith community, in fact, but we do have people from businesses, from the private sector, from major groups and stakeholders, from member states, from all the stakeholders joining us and attending some of these dialogue sessions. So this is a demonstration of the importance of the role of faith actors on environmental issues. And as you can see, and as I have mentioned in my messages, that we do have more than 57 religions and congregations participating with us. So, I mean, all of this is a demonstration of the connection that we have among all religions, all beliefs, and all faiths. This is very important, especially in the context of today's session on mindfulness. You know, we keep saying that we are facing the triple planetary crises, climate change, pollution, biodiversity degradation, and ecosystem destruction. And on top of that, what we're facing by the health issues imposed by the virus COVID-19. And this is a time that we need to reflect, and we need to work our minds and our hearts together. And we have tried since 1972, when the environmental movement started with the first Stockholm conference. Since then, we have had more than 1,200 international, regional, and national agreements on the environment. Imagine, we have tried policies, we have tried putting agreements to work as part of the environmental governance. But we are still facing, and maybe facing, more challenges than what we had in the 1970s. We have tried resorting to technology, and that did not help us much. We have tried other approaches, and that did not help. We still are facing tremendous existential threats and challenges. So we need to think, as I mentioned, with our hearts and our minds. And this brings the interconnectedness between humans and their surroundings, and between humans and their creators, or the divine, or the spiritual forces that govern this system of existence. And that is done by many religions in different ways. Some resort to prayers in their mosques, or prayers in their churches, or next to their beds before they go to sleep, or simply by disconnecting and focusing on their inner self and connecting with their creator, with their spiritual leadership or spiritual guidance. And that, in many cases, leads to be mindful of your existence, your um, reason for existence, and how you deal with your surroundings. A few days ago, on Sunday, we went with a group of young people, around 30, 40 people, who were participating in the United Nations Environment Assembly. We went to one of the famous forests in Kenya, Karura Forest, and we practiced mindfulness. We hugged trees. We spoke to the leaves. We disconnected from our material being, our material surroundings. We appreciated the flies, the monkeys, the roots of the trees, the trunks. We thought about why all of this is interconnected, and how this creation, how this beautiful nature has been made in such a wonderful way that everything is interdependent. Now, having humans being the superiors to this creation does not mean anything. I mean, it's meaningless. We are only one species of 8.7 million species on Earth. So why do we have the superiority to destroy all of that for our greed? So we need to think, and think deeply. And that thinking is done by when we disconnect from the material surroundings and connect with our spiritual being, and think indeed in all of our doings. It does not have to be, to be mindful that you do disconnect. You can be mindful when you go to a supermarket and to try to buy something for your consumption. You can work your mind and your heart and relate to the spiritual being and think, would this thing that I am buying today serve me only, or would it serve the nature, or would it serve the next generation? If I keep over consuming, that is selfishness, and that is not being mindful of your obligations and the obligations towards the others. So I am very delighted that we have started this movement, Mindfulness for Earth, with a group of eminent leaders who have been practicing this for decades and who have come up with great strides and great efforts to bring people to think about how do we deal with our natural environment and nature in general. I am so honored and pleased to not only present to you this group of eminent leaders, but also present this as one of the most important ways that we need to integrate into our daily practices and our daily lives. So we are mindful of what's happening and mindful of the solutions that we need to take forward. So thank you very much for being with us today. I present to you Dr. Tara and Dr. Komanga, who will lead us in this effort and in today's session. Thank you very much all, and with God blessings.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Iyad, mainly for inviting us to be a part of Faith for Earth dialogue sessions that have been taking place over 10 days, as you have said, and we have also attended some of your very inspiring sessions. So this is, we consider this as a part of this ongoing dialogue. So thank you very much. So let me say good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone joining from around the world. And we are extremely grateful to have our Mindfulness for Earth co-chairs and members present here with us today. That includes our co-chairs, Dr. Iyad himself, a director of UNEP Faith for Earth, Venerable Lama Jiva Mahathera, Chief Abbot of Nisaranavanaya Monastery, Venerable Ringu Tulku Rinpoche, founder of Bodhicharya International, and Swami Gurnathananda Saraswati, the resident Swami of Chinmaya Mission of Sri Lanka. So at Mindfulness for Earth, we recognize the urgent need to tackle and prevent the triple climate crisis through the methods of mindfulness, prayer, and spirituality. Our events such as today's dialogue are organized in partnership with UNEP's Faith for Earth initiative. Mindfulness for Earth also recognizes the importance of how people of all faiths and the scientific community can come together and implement the eco-contemplative methods of mindfulness, prayer, and spirituality to create a direct impact on protecting our sacred Mother Earth. As such, today we will demonstrate together how we can achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, more specifically SDG 3, which relates to mental health and physical well-being, SDG 12, which relates to the responsible consumption, and SDG 13, which relates to tackling or inspiring climate action. So, Mindfulness for Earth will co-host future events in partnership with Faith for Earth. We are hoping to organize a virtual research symposium on 5th of June as a part of Stockholm Plus 50 events, and UNGA, as well as COP27. So you can find out more information about these future events on our website by visiting www.mindfulnessforearth.org. Mindfulness 4 as in number 4 in the middle for the website. So thank you very much, and may I please hand over to Tara. Thank you so much. Tara, we can't hear you.
Thank you very much, Komanga. Thank you very much, Dr. Iyad, for setting the stage and putting things in perspective. It's a delight to be here, a great honor and privilege to be part of the United Nations Environmental Assembly for the first time, actually. It's a great honor to be a part of a forum where the world's highest level decision-making body, which is the UNEP, which I didn't realize, enjoys a membership of some 193 member states of the world. So perhaps it's all the countries in the world. So it's a great honor to be part of that, since you obviously head a body, Dr. Iyad, which wields a lot of influence amongst governments, policymakers, and leaders in the world. So today's session will be on mindfulness, faith, and sustainability. Once again, I thank Dr. Iyad, like Komanga, for having invited us and for all the wonderful arrangements that he and his team have been doing in the last 10 days. I too have participated in 1 or 2 sessions organized by them, extremely inspiring, and a lot of hard work has gone behind the scenes. So during today's session, we hope to introduce mindfulness formally through our spiritual religious leaders who have been practicing it for decades. We hope to explore and expand on the power of mindfulness, to discuss the role of prayer contemplative practices in the context of mindfulness, and more particularly in the context of climate protection and preventing the catastrophes related to climate that we are seeing. All of these above will be talking in terms of addressing the triple planetary crisis. And in my next presentation, I will be talking about how we could shift the discourse in relation to the TPC. We'd like to highlight the role of responsible consumption, responsible behaviors, and responsible decision-making as we, as a group, facilitate and champion the movement towards SDG 12 in particular, and of course, accomplishing Agenda 2030. So initially, I will now move to introducing the first two senior religious leaders. Both of them have practiced mindfulness and different forms of contemplative practices in their respective faiths for several years. And I'm going to start with Venerable Dharma Jiva, who is the abbot, the chief preceptor, and the meditation master of one of the most respected and old monasteries, which is actually situated in a rainforest in the western province of Sri Lanka, Nissarana Vanaya. He is a Buddhist Theravada bhikkhu with 3.5 decades experience in learning mindfulness, in practicing mindfulness, and teaching mindfulness to thousands of students, conducting hundreds of retreats around the world. More recently, about 6 years ago, he founded an organization called Satipasala Foundation, where he introduced mindfulness to school children and to school teachers and school principals and administrators. And this movement has grown extensively, and his tireless efforts led to mindfulness being introduced into the school curriculum just about a year ago. He's the co-chair of Mindfulness for Earth, gives us a lot of inspiration in the work we do. Venerable Dharma Jiva's intervention of about 10 minutes will be followed by a 5-minute guided mindfulness meditation session. After he finishes, I will move on to introducing Swami Gurnathananda. Over to you, Venerable Dharma Jiva. Thank you.
Can you hear? Yes?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah. So I was waiting to thank Chad and all the two ladies about the introduction of mindfulness for faith. We had 2-3 sessions. Everywhere the mother organization was Faith for Earth. And now, within a short period, the introduction of mindfulness for Earth was a dream. And while I was happy and glad about that, today morning, I got the letter from Jad telling that he got a chance. He was so happy, delighted to inform that our basic decisions will be tabled into the main hall in the UN Assembly. So that was a great advancement. Thank you very much. But I am a very poor organizer. I can't imagine how you people are taking so much of pain, so much of time, and giving me a chance. And I am just a forest monk living in the forest. And listening to me is a miracle. And I will try to explain what is the mindfulness and how it is historical development and kind of thing. I doubt whether within 10 minutes I can explain, because it took 8 years for me to understand mindfulness. Okay, anyway, under the present context, it usually attributed to the Buddha, the Lord Buddha. He has number of discourses, which is called Four Foundation of Mindfulness. And numerous other discourses, our Rinpoche and others, I think already know. But soon we started the mindfulness for school or mindful school. It happened me to interact with the other faith leaders, Swami and our Dulip Chigera, the father, and other Muslim brothers, and they contributed their parallel ideas or their counterpart or their interpretation of mindfulness. One day, a Muslim that he told Bante, when you are working with the Sri Lanka, 70% Buddhist and 30% non-religious, and when you are talking mindfulness, people will think that you are going to convert people into Buddhism. So therefore, our followers may not support. Swami Gurnathananda at that time, he also gave me some assurance, and he told there is a word, morahaba, in the Quran. That's a synonym for mindfulness. And when I read the Bible, there's a lot of words regarding the awareness. And when I read the Mahabharata and others, the diligence, the vigilance, and the Satchitananda. So I find a lot of other similar terms, and therefore each and every religious master converted or conveyed this is to their followers. But there may be some interpretational differences and kind of thing. Recently, when the mindfulness came into the universal level, everyone thanked the Buddha, everyone thanked the teaching of the Buddha, but now after 30-40 years of evolution, we know it is a part and parcel of a human mind. It's a birthright. Whether you like it or not, whether you practice or not, you are mindful. So then why should we have mindful school? Why should we have mindfulness for the earth? The problem is we have to catalyze it. The catalytic effect is what we are organizing this kind of forums, and we are sharing with others. So therefore, even though it is started with the Buddhist teaching, there is no harm, there are no communication problems to share with others. So whenever the mindfulness, once we introduce in this literal way, we have to understand it is evolving along the evolution of the human being. And there are a lot of evolutional methods that literally evolving, and as the problem happens, how mindfulness happens. So if I am to give a briefing about what happened in Sri Lanka, we had a golden time, about 1,000 years, it was fully accepted and practiced by the king and the subjects. But later, due to a lot of other interventions and kind of thing, we ourselves lost it. I was born in 52, and when I am at my birth and up to the maybe 60, no one mentioned the word, even in Sri Lanka, even in Theravada tradition. In 1978 only, I heard that is the crux of the teaching of the Buddha. By that time, I got the credit pass for Buddhism as a subject, but I was not aware. Then I made up my mind, if that is such a crux, such a meaning, such a valuable, practical, pragmatic thing, why not I go for, that is how I became a monk. So when it is evolving, it evolved with the problems, whatever the crisis happened. And mindfulness is a panacea for me, excuse me. You may or may not, but I call it a panacea because it's applicable to everything. So now we come to this triple climatic crisis, and we have to, even before that, we have to appreciate the sustainable development goals introduced by the UN, and their mindfulness is clearly defined without the term. Very interesting. Very, very interesting. Everything is defined, but the term was not there. So I thought I must make a determination to go to UN and let them know this is the crux of the meaning of mindfulness. Why don't you apply this term mindfulness so that communication will be very straightforward? While it is happening only, the Faith for Earth gave a window for us to present mindfulness for Earth. And there, it's an invitation for me to introduce your internal environment. So far we discussed all you are very quoted the external environment, triple crisis. So I am not going to deal deep into that, but I will introduce there are triple crises internally in each of us, we spiritual masters and the followers. The first thing is conceit. That is what the politicians and others are misled. The second thing is, once you are conceited, you are carried away by views, wrong views. And then you go to the desire, sensuous pleasure. So each of us harboring these three elements, they are just like the external triple climatic crisis like. So in mindfulness, what we do is not only analyzing it, not only finding fault with the politicians and the economy and the social setup, we try our best to contribute by straightening our way of thinking, mindfulness, we can do something. And mindfulness is practical. So therefore, I will lead 5 minutes. How can we mindful and leading to the external triple crisis as well as understanding of the internal triple crisis. In that sense, mindfulness is a mirror. You can see the image, who am I? And you are the universe. Internal atmosphere is carried away by three media, these are called proliferations. We are prolific in thinking pertaining to your conceit. You are prolific in thinking pertaining to your view. That is whatever maybe you believe. And you are prolifically thinking about sensuous pleasure and the desire. So mindfulness is reflecting us how much they are carried away from your simple human nature. Therefore, whenever you are not mindful, we call you are eccentric. And cumulative effect of eccentric community is the climatic bad effect. It affects the external climate. Of course, we know we few people can't make much of a change because it is on the hands of the politicians and the economics and the social scientists. But we can understand as far as we are straightening our method, we are straightening and understanding our internal cyclones, internal crisis. And if as far as it is spreading, one day we can approach all the wrong decision makers in a faithful way, in a mindful way. So therefore, mindfulness is like a mirror. You can see your own image and you only can see it is happening in a simple, specific dimension. Here, now, I am. Whenever it is not here, you are eccentric. We are not, whenever you are not now, you are eccentric. Whenever you are not concerned about yourself, you are eccentric. So stepping stone is to be here and now and see how much I am conceded even for this climatic crisis. How much we are carried away by the views we are brought by our scripts in our mind. And how much we are harboring our private and confidential sense pleasure. Can we share them on the forum of the mindfulness for earth? And therefore we have to come down to the same ground, to the humanity, and try to be mindful. I have some simple techniques developed for mindful children. So I am inviting you to listen to a sound of a bell. It is starting with the high pitch and slowly reducing. So you have to sit comfortably and make yourself preparing for listening. So that means your body is not purposefully changing. Body is calm down, make it symmetrical and relax. And mind also try to focus basically to the sound and listen to the sound and see or try to see what's the end of the sound. You are tracing towards the tapering end of the sound and try to be, whenever the sound ceases to exist, to be here and now. So I invite, if you do not mind, you may close your eyes and just listen to the sound and try to be with it till I give the second knock, and that is the end of my session. Thank you for the cooperation. When sound disappears, you are limited to yourself, and each of us representing the same energy. So we feel like a mindful family, and therefore I have a lot to share with you as far as the experience and the methodologies and the good news. So hoping, creating a hope like that, I would like to sum up my session. And thank you, Jihad, and thank you for the Faith for Earth, because you give a window opening for us. A big thank.
Thank you very much, Jiva. I'm sure what you said at the end about experiences and comments we could take forward during the Q&A session. With that, I'm going to move on to Swami Gurnathananda Saraswati. He is a seeker of the truth and a disciple of Swami Chinmayananda. He studied Vedanta in India at Sandipani Sandhanalaya in Chinmaya Mission. He is presently based in Chinmaya Mission of Sri Lanka as the resident Swami. In keeping with the vision of Chinmaya Mission, inner transformation of individuals resulting in a happy world around them, that's the vision of the Chinmaya Mission, Swami is engaged in sharing knowledge from the scriptures in the modern context, motivating adults and young adults to become positive contributors to society. I've known Swami for many years and found him to be a very inspiring spiritual leader. And he's going to share with us his experiences and understanding on the presence of mindfulness in different faiths and religions, starting with his own. Over to you, Swami.
My greetings and humble salutations to respected monks and all the brothers and sisters who have gathered here, who care for the Mother Earth. Now, let's go into the topic itself. When we talk about mindfulness, the phrase mindfulness, the term mindfulness itself gives us a clue. That is being mindful. In English common speak, we say be mindful of something. We say that. So here, what we are talking about is being alert and aware of one's own thoughts. And one will want to know, why should you be aware of your own thoughts? Because the thoughts lead to action and actions lead to consequences. So once you become aware of your thoughts, then you can become aware of your actions and also the consequences of the action. Only when we are far removed from the consequences of action, we tend to make mistakes, we tend to err, and we tend to sin. Spiritually we call it sinning. But what is a sin? Sin that which brings sorrow to us and the others. So only when we are far removed from the consequences of our own action, we tend to do these things. But how do we become aware of the consequences? And by the time we become aware of the consequences, it's too late. Because actions have been performed and the consequences are being faced. So one need to become aware and alert of one's own thoughts. So crux of mindfulness is being very alert and being very aware of the thoughts which are going on. Because every thought has its own consequences. Now, interestingly, if you look at all the religions talks about values and virtues. And when we talk about values and virtues, sometimes people do understand these values and virtues as being a good person, etc. But these values and virtues are based on being alert and aware of our own thoughts and actions and the consequences. Because consequences can be in the form of the consequences to me as individual, and that is a direct consequence, and the direct consequences onto the others and the environment. Then interestingly, the indirect consequences coming back to me because my impact of my action on the others and the environment. So if you look at the virtues and values which all the religions talk about, how can you practice those values? How can you practice those virtues if one is not mindful? One is not alert. One is not aware of one's own thoughts, because everything starts from thinking. So, without thinking, actions are not possible. Without action, consequences are not possible. So, if you look at any virtue or value, the love which talked about, non-injury, integrity, selflessness, all of these values, scriptures, all the religions promote. If you take Christianity or Hinduism or Islam or Buddhism, Judaism, all of these religions promote these values. I just listed a few. The love means, you're trying to connect with everyone. Why? Because what happens is, through our thinking, we become disconnected from others. The Hindu scriptures say the whole universe is connected and functioning as one entity. We call it Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. The whole universe is one family. Meaning all of us are connected. Whether we like it or not, we are connected. Unfortunately, because of our lack of awareness, because of our lack of alertness, we ignore this fact that we are already connected, and we try to become disconnected through our thinking. Interestingly, that's what we call individualism. And then when the individualism becomes strong, along with the individualism, selfishness comes up. Then when you become selfish, you become careless, you become insensitive about the consequences towards the others, or for that matter, environment. So therefore, practicing any of these values, which other religions talk about, requires being mindful, being aware, being alert. In other words, you can say being in the present. Being in the present, watching your thoughts. Because once you become aware of your own thinking, then the tendency to become aware of the action and the tendency to become aware of the consequences increases. And once you become aware of the consequences of your own action, then it's possible to check our thinking, check our behavior towards good. So this is what almost all the religions promote in the, so they say, you can call it whatever name, but to practice the values and virtues promoted by all scriptures, being alert and being aware is required, and that's what I would call, in a way, being mindful of my own thinking. So I will take a couple of examples in Hinduism. Because time is short, I don't want to talk a lot and waste time. So I will take a couple of examples in Hinduism. As I mentioned, we regard the whole universe as one family. So idea is to understand that we are connected with each other, and every thought, every action of us has its consequences on the entire universe, not only the earth, the whole universe. So we may think that on one hand, we may think that we are insignificant and we are not connected, etc. And nobody cares about what I do. Of course, the whole universe can feel it. So we have to become sensitive. So much so that in Hinduism, the ultimate of Hinduism, ultimate goal in Hinduism is liberation. And liberation is not possible unless otherwise you learn to connect with the whole universe, where you should be able to see yourself in the entire universe, and you should be able to see the entire universe in yourself. Meaning, you have to become one with the whole creation. You cannot be an individual, you cannot be a selfish person and achieve the religious goal. So there, the emphasis is very strong, where you cannot progress spiritually by separating yourself from the earth, from the society, from the country, from the universe. As an individual, trying to be selfish, you cannot make any progress spiritually. So whether we call it, we care for environment or environment, we may call it, we may not call it, but that's a different thing. But your spiritual progress, your spiritual existence matters here, and where you need to be mindful of your own thinking and the consequences of your own thinking, because what it can do to the environment and what it can do to the others. So individualism, if you are not aware, if you are not alert, and if you are not mindful about your thinking, individualism increases. We call it selfishness, leading to more and more actions which causes harmful effects on the others as well as environment. So the need to check this. For example, being mindful of our thinking, being mindful of what is happening around us, being mindful of the environment is very crucial. One example I want to highlight. Let's take plastic, which is much talked about when it comes to the climate crisis, one of the contributing factors to the climate crisis. I don't want to talk about plastic per se, but one point I want to highlight is that we lost touch with the whole environment, where we forgot to notice, we failed to notice that in universe, in the environment, everything is cyclic. Nothing stays permanent. It's a whole cycle. Something gets created and something exists and then it gets destroyed. So the whole cycle is maintained. And we lost sight of this. And we went and developed materials which broke the cycle. And we started developing things which cannot be taken care of by nature, and we also could not take care of it. And we end up with accumulation of plastic, and now we are sitting and wondering what do we do? But this is a simple thing where we lost track of what is happening in the environment. We were not mindful, we were not alert as to how this whole universe works. So the universe, how it works, etc., there is enough and more information available. But unfortunately, because as I said, when we don't have to face the consequences, because the increase in individualism and selfishness, what has happened is we have lost track of what is happening in the. So finally, what I would like to say is that the problem of this problem itself is because of sense of individualism becoming strong and stronger. And solution for that also lies with individuals. Because being mindful is about every individual becoming mindful. What we are trying to do through mindfulness is what we are trying to do is we are trying to make every individual be aware of, be alert of the need to be mindful of their thoughts, of their action, and the consequences of their action on the environment. So, I would like to wind up saying that the whole idea of mindfulness is to set the right attitude towards the others and the environment. Right attitude towards thinking, how we regard the whole universe, the Mother Earth, we call it. What is our attitude towards the earth? What is our attitude towards the environment? As I was talking about in some other discussion, right now, because of the individualism, we think our attitude is we are the user and the earth or the environment is something which is used. We are the owner and that is being used. We are the consumer and that is being consumed. Unfortunately, that's not the case. The reality is we are part of one entity cooperating with each other. So if we have to exist in this planet Earth, we have to coexist and we have to cooperate with the rest of the environment. And this cooperation and coexistence with the rest of the environment is only possible if our attitude towards the environment and the earth is right. And being mindfulness is about being mindful of our attitude about with the others, with the environment. I think with that, time is kind of we have come to the end of the time. So let me say thank you and wish you all success in what all of us are trying to do with regard to the environment through the mindfulness process. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Swamiji, for that very inspiring 10 minutes. I hope we can take this conversation further during the Q&A, particularly the evolution of individuality and the individualism and selfishness and the interconnectedness of all of us with the universe. Thank you so much. With that, I'm going to hand over to Kumanga to do the introductions to Venerable Rinpoche. Thank you.
Thank you, Tara. So now to introduce my teacher, Venerable Rinpoche Rinpoche. He is a Buddhist monk of the Kagyu order. Since 1990, he has been traveling and teaching Buddhism and meditation at more than 50 universities in all 5 continents, institutes and Buddhist centers in Europe, USA, Canada, Australia, and Asia. Rinpoche founded Bodhicharya, an international organization that coordinates the worldwide activities to preserve and transmit Buddhist teachings and to promote intercultural dialogues and educational and social projects. So, Venerable Rinpoche Rinpoche, may we invite you to bless us with your wisdom.
Thank you very much. My respect to everybody, and I'm very honored to be part of this dialogue and also this project. When I was a boy, a small boy, I was a very angry person. I was fighting with everybody. And I thought I was a brave person. So I used to fight with even older boys. And I used to be so angry at a certain point that if my fist could not hurt them, I would hit them with my head running from a long distance and then throw them off the ground. And then I would bite them if my fists were not hurting them. And I belong to a tribe who thinks that a boy has to be brave. And so therefore, they were happy that I was fighting. Then I went to kind of a monastery when I was around 8. And when I came back, I was not like that. Some of my clan members were not happy. And they said that, oh, he has now become like a fresh cow dung, a little bit soft and little warm and not very good. I had learned during this time that you have to look at yourself, what's going on. What's going on when you're angry? What's going on if you're doing something? What's going on? And what you are doing is affecting other people. And there are lots of teachings and explanations. But the main thing is to reflect on your own thoughts, emotions, reactions, and actions that generate from there, and then what is the result. When I look back, I understood that actually that I was so angry and I wanted to fight was not a good decision, was not really necessary. It was not helping me and not helping anybody, actually only creating pain and problems to myself and others. And that's why I understood deeply that it was not really a good idea. It was not a, positive thing to act and react like that. And when I came to understand deeply, I think without doing much, my own behavior and my own way of reacting start to change, I think. So therefore, the mindfulness is actually nothing more than looking at your own thoughts, your own reactions, your own emotions, and your actions of your body and speech. And through that, to understand a little bit whether what you are doing, what is happening, is something that is helpful to yourself in the future, helpful to people around you, helpful to the whole world, or not. So therefore, it is, I think, sometimes nowadays, people talk about emotional intelligence and many other words. But I think the main thing is to really little bit see what is going on and to understand that a little bit deeply. I understand very clearly now that any kind of practices, whether it's being done by any different religions, or in that matter, any kind of training we have to do it with certain level of mindfulness. And in fact, I would say that mindfulness is the only weapon or only technique or only tool we have if we have to work on ourselves. And if we have to change something, change our habits, change our way of doing things, change our way of seeing things, change our way of reacting to each other, change our way we respect the environment, the earth, all these things, I think we need to have mindfulness. We have no other way. We have no other tools than to use the mindfulness. So therefore, the training in mindfulness is not about a different kind of faith or different kind of religion or different kind of path. It's just a technique, a tool. Without that tool, we cannot actually train or actually reflect on anything. And if we use that tool in a good way, I think without going into any kind of differences of ideas, differences of philosophies, differences of belief systems, we can deeply understand what is the thing that I need, what is the thing that I want, and therefore I can also understand what others want and what is good for me and what good for others. And so therefore, my way of seeing and reacting could slowly change by itself. And I think that's called wisdom. And wisdom, not only in an intellectually understanding kind of wisdom, but emotional wisdom. That we understand what is useful, what is not useful, what is creating problem and pain for others and what's not. And I think in this, everybody is united. All different kind of faiths, whatever philosophy they have, whatever different belief system they have, they all come to the same thing. That we have to try to, be compassionate and kind and respect to each other and tolerance and all kind of things, and not only different religions and faiths. But I think it comes to the same thing with those who don't have any religion, those who are just human beings, or who believe in a system of reason, like science and things like that. So therefore, maybe the mindfulness can bring everything together and can be used as a, really non-controversial and very open and common tool, so that we can actually help ourselves and help each other to bring kind of a positive change, not only in preserving the climate, preserving the right kind of climate, preserving the earth, but also, all other problems and difficulties that we have. If we can use this to solve those problems, I think it would make a great sense. So since everybody already spoke so much, and there's nothing much more I need to say, so I would just thank everybody for doing this great job and giving me the chance to say a few words. Thank you very much.
Thank you, dear Rinpoche. I really resonated with the words that you expressed about the direct impact of our emotions on our environment, and that the mindfulness is the only way or only tool or weapon we have to work on ourselves in order to understand the need of others and the environment. So thank you, and I hope that we also talk a little bit more on this during our dialogue session later on. So now may I invite co-founder of Mindfulness for Earth, Dr. Tara Dimel. She's also the co-chair of Education Forum in Sri Lanka since January 2020 and a member of the Worldwide Commission to Educate All Kids since the onset of COVID-19 pandemic. She has served the government of Sri Lanka for over a decade as Secretary to the Ministry of Education, Advisor to the President of Sri Lanka on Education, and Vice Chairman of National Education Commission, and the Coordinator for Presidential Task Force on Education from 1997 through 2005. Throughout her career, Dr. Dimel has been promoting quality and equity in education, in child protection and preventing child abuse in schools, and preventing ragging and bullying in universities. She's a member of the Global Consultative Group Mindfulness Initiative UK, and is active in incorporating mindfulness into schools, developing programs on mindfulness with values, ethics, and social emotional learning, targeting educators in schools and universities. She founded, like I mentioned, mindfulness. She also founded Mindful Educators in Sri Lanka in 2019. And co-authored Manual for Mindful Educators in 2021. Tara, stage is yours.
Thank you, Kumanga, for that very generous introduction. Thank you so much, and good afternoon, everybody. I would just like to begin my brief intervention by highlighting the existential crisis that we all are facing. The existential crisis is conventionally known as the triple planetary crisis, and I'm now not referring to what Venerable Jiva highlighted, which is our internal triple crisis, which is an extraordinarily lovely term to use, and I look forward to discussing that during the Q&A. Here I'm talking about the conventional TPC, or the triple planetary crisis, which include the climate change and the natural degradation of our entire ecosystem, including flora and the fauna, escalating loss of biodiversity, and the colossal pollution and waste that we see across all nations globally. So these have been systematically destroying the planet Earth, worsening our existential crisis to a peak, so much so that today we are on a brink, facing catastrophe after catastrophe. And even in the last 1 week, we saw the catastrophe is now not limited just to the natural disasters and catastrophes, but we have man-made catastrophe capping what we are currently going through in terms of health-related catastrophes and the natural disasters. So we are truly on a brink. At today's forum, when we are discussing the triple planetary crisis and this laudable aim to march towards Sustainable Development Goal 12 primarily, and to accomplish Agenda 2030, I felt we needed to pause a bit and to honestly reflect and ask ourselves some important questions. Firstly, whether we as a global population of citizens, and of course our leaders and those who make decisions for us, actually engage in responsible behavior? Do they engage in moderate and sensible consumption patterns? Are their behaviors more selfless or more selfish, and their actions thereof? Secondly, whether the wealthier and the more privileged nations are shifting their habitual behaviors, even marginally, from accumulation of wealth and assets, or are they shifting to a more kind of a renunciant lifestyle where selflessness and generosity superimpose or override the collection of wealth and assets? That's something I think we need to ask ourselves very honestly. Also, these wealthier and more privileged nations, are they moving from being more profit-making and they are bent towards exploitation to working within ethical frameworks, to working within a moral compass? Can we see that happening, or does the status quo remain? The third question that I often ask myself is whether these pledges and promises that are made at series of UN-initiated meetings through the hard work of people like Dr. Iyad, for decades having COPs leading up to COP26 a few months ago at Glasgow, are these pledges and promises sincere? Are they genuine? Are they honest? And is there an actual commitment towards implementing these? Or are these just statements displaying lip service to some important politically relevant ideas? Final question being, which is extremely relevant, although it is given as the final self-reflection on my part, is as the 21st century is rapidly moving ahead, and with multiple technologies before us, each new technology actually overtaking its predecessor in terms of complicated technologies and tools, tech-based innovations that are infiltrating every aspect of our lives, starting from the primary school onwards. Are all these tech innovations promoting the triple planetary crisis, aiding and abetting it then directly or indirectly? Or can these tech advances be used for mitigating the triple planetary crisis and preventing further catastrophes directly or indirectly? I think these are 4 questions that we need to self-reflect and ask ourselves very honestly. That being said, as a member of Mindfulness for Earth, I would like to suggest that, or rather propose, that Mindfulness for Earth is introducing and explaining practices that are based on practical mind training. These practices may seem intangible, they may seem simple, but experiential evidence has shown that these are profound, they are insightful, and that they eventually lead to wisdom. And emotional wisdom, like Venerable Rinpoche says, and wisdom that is not the conventional wisdom that we refer to in our general conversations. We at Mindfulness for Earth would humbly invite everyone to consider shifting the discourse on the triple planetary crisis so that we can understand where mindfulness comes from, what is mindfulness and its power. Can we understand that through practice and reflection? And what are these powers? Firstly, the power to heal, to connect and soothe in a calming manner, to promote concord rather than discord with wise reflection and clear comprehension. And secondly, the power of mindfulness to insightfully explore, cultivate wisdom with deep understanding. Now, all what I have said in terms of the powers that mindfulness can wield have been backed by hardcore scientific research. These are published in peer-reviewed journals, tested repeatedly, replicated, so that the evidence is sound by world-class neuroscientists, psychologists, and others. The neuroscience and the science of epigenetics is now at the forefront of world's scientific frontiers, and newer advances in molecular genetics, psychology, neurobiology, and various types of neurosciences are now proliferating the medical and the scientific literature. So all what I'm talking about, the power of mindfulness, is backed by hardcore science, and that's what I wanted to tell you. We would like to sincerely and with humility invite all the citizens and the influencers of the world. UNEP is one such powerful influencer, and the leaders of our individual countries and communities to consider what we have said very seriously, so that mindfulness, reflection, contemplative practices can be introduced formally into national and global agendas. It has not been done so far, but why not? Also, I would like to suggest that we be consciously aware and accept again with humility that our conventional behaviors, all of ours, conventional behaviors actually don't promote sustainability, and instead of moving towards reaching the SDG 12, we are actually moving away from it quite rapidly. Take the recent case in point, the large-scale destruction, the devastation, and the loss of human life and animal life, and the anguish that's going on in Ukraine right now. And to coin a phrase from Venerable Dharma Jiva, the political tyranny that we keep seeing every single day. Ukraine is miles away from us, but we too feel the anguish that those people are feeling. So are our behaviors promoting sustainability? Let's ask ourselves that honestly. To be self-reflective and introspective so that we can someday influence the decision makers, influence them in such a way that they can change their lifestyles towards more ethical and responsible lifestyles and actions. In fact, the choices and the decisions we make, we as simple, ordinary citizens, may eventually have an impact on the policies and the development agendas that they make. So let's not underestimate ourselves. Finally, whilst thanking everybody, starting with Faith for Earth, Dr. Iyad and his excellent team, for all the arrangements and bringing this important subject to the forefront during this forum, I would like each and every one of you to reflect very strongly, very deeply, with a lot of sensitivity to what we discussed today, and to share these sentiments and these practices and these ideas with your families, your loved ones, and the society around you. Who knows, eventually our collective work and our collective thoughts and positive vibrations may actually have an impact on the world someday. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tara Demel, for those very wise words. So now I'm seeing the time is running out, so I think it's my turn.
Yes. Before that, Kumanga, I just need to introduce you. as my partner and co-founder of Mindfulness for Earth, a live wire, much more alive than me, behind and in front of the scenes, to make mindfulness what it is today. So Dr. Kumanga is the founder of the Center for Advanced Learning of Mindfulness, CALM. Through her personal and professional work, she promotes the mind and the human earth connection in relation to tackling the climate crisis. In July 2020, she co-organized the first ever dialogue between His Holiness the Dalai Lama and the Western Police Force in London. Kumanga does a lot of hard work and profound activities connected to advancing the cause of mindfulness towards protecting the earth and the climate crisis. Thank you very much, Kumanga. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Tara. I would like to share my screen, if I may. I think, can you see my screen now? Is that visible?
Visible, can see.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, thank you. So now I thought, coming to the end of our group dialogue, it's important to understand the methods that we could use to reconnect or become aware of this already existing connection we have with our Mother Earth. So by doing so, I'd like to invite all of us, actually, before I say a few words about this topic, that let's close our eyes. I'm going to guide you through a small visualization technique. So let's come to a comfortable posture, relax our body, and relaxing our mind. Let's take a long, deep breath, really expanding our lower abdomen. And breathing out. So now, let's, bring to our mind, let's visualize a scenery that you can connect with, connecting with water. It could be a waterfall that you have visited. It could be a river. It could be our Mother Ocean. This moment of reflection or connection that you felt with the water element at a time that you visited a place, wherever that may be. So bring this image of the water body in front of you, in front of our mind's eye. So now, when we began this visualization, connecting with our Mother Earth this way, what comes to your mind to describe how you feel right now? One word, could be one word. So I'd like to invite you to gently open your eyes and type any of the words that may come to you as a reflection of our very short practice. So, and I can't see the chat window right now, but we will look at that later during the dialogue session perhaps. So we'll quickly go through these slides. So through our CALM organization, we provide this 8-week a framework which can be integrated as a 4-week practice session as well. It's called the Advanced Mindfulness-Based Practices Program. And why do we call it the Advanced Mindfulness-Based Practices? Is that it draws upon the wisdom of our Mother Earth. We consider Mother Earth as the greatest teacher, and we can learn so much from her. So this is why it's called the Advanced Mindfulness-Based Practices Program. And it incorporates the methods of ICE. We call it the methods of ICE, which relates to investigate, cultivate, and eco-contemplate. through mindfulness, the water element, and Bohemian dialogue. As we know, 70% of our body is covered, filled with water. About 80% of our brain is floating in water. Our Mother Earth is covered with over 70% of water. And with regards to contemplating with the water element and understanding how our mind works, we can use the water element to kind of cultivate this closeness or reconnect with our Mother Earth. So, for example, the waterfall, river, and the ocean practices that we use within the AMBP framework lead to this deeper connection and to cultivate great qualities of our Mother Nature. So, for example, also we can use the water element to describe how our mind works. So when we begin our meditation practice, it's like that of the waterfall. We really see, our thoughts flow continuously. And then as we continue on the path of our practice, our spiritual practice, connecting with our Mother Earth, we come to kind of the river stage, where we call, our thoughts flow like that of a river, meandering through a valley. And although, obstacles, things happen, we can still rest our mind and let it flow. So, and then it becomes like the sea without waves. And also, even though there could be turbulence on the top of the waves, we can, learn how to connect with the depths of the ocean, the stillness of the depthness of the calmness of Mother Ocean. So we use the visualization practices and sensory practices within this model with the water element, and which offers a powerful way of learning wakefully reconnecting with the interconnectedness of our inner and outer nature. Furthermore, it can guide our mind to develop and cultivate this, like I said, great qualities of our Mother Nature. So one of the Buddhist leaders who I interviewed when I was developing this framework through the PhD, Mingyur Rinpoche, he said that, especially for me, when I see the water, there is a feeling of cool, calm, and a compassionate aspect, and a flexibility aspect. So when we meditate, just watching the river flow, it makes our mind calm, cooling, and there's a sense of not so dry, but richness and flexibility. So this is what we call the third teacher, sometimes what we call the symbolic teacher also. Phenomena becomes the teacher. Not only that, in Scotland in 2017, for the first time in Shetlands, the medical doctors, they implemented connecting with Mother Nature as a way of addressing depression, mental health, things like depression and anxiety disorders. They said, step outside, be still, listen to Mother Nature, touch the sea, and so on. And so the ICE framework, as we call it, the investigate, cultivate, and contemplate, sits within the 4 foundations of mindfulness as taught by Lord Buddha. Mindfulness of the body, feelings, mind, and phenomena, and the water element practices come under the phenomena aspect. So this is what we are talking about as under ICE. We use the framework of Lord Buddha's first teachings, the 4 Noble Truths, as a method to investigate the nature of our suffering. When we investigate this framework, we understand in the context of our AMBP program, this includes the suffering of sentient beings and the suffering of our Mother Earth. Under the second truth, the origin of suffering, the core origin is our ignorance, the non-recognition of the interconnected nature of phenomena. And then under the practices, the 4 establishments of mindfulness, we use this method to cultivate the natural and innate qualities of the mind and integrating these eco-contemplative practices within our daily lives. So within this framework, mindfulness of the body, feelings, and mind, we use practices such as the body scan and compassion practices. And we have a specific practice called the waves of the ocean, breath, sounds, mind, and the body practice, the waterfall practice, waterfall, river, and the ocean practice, and so on. And under the sensory experiences of water, we have practices called the water bowl practice, water and lemon smell and taste practice, waterfall practice with the singing bowl, like Venerable Dharma Jiva got us to listen to the singing bowl earlier today, and the ice cube practice, which leads to understanding the interconnected nature of our suffering, and it leads to also a practice of compassion, deep compassion towards ourselves, others, including our pets, our animals, and our elements, and Mother Earth. And then the water crystal practice focuses on this really the element of emptiness. Buddha's teaching of emptiness and compassion are like they say the two wings of the bird. Without these two, it's incomplete. So our framework encompasses both these angles. And then through the method of Bohemian dialogue sessions, we use this as a method of identifying the fragmentation as a danger which could arise as a result of not paying attention to our thought processes, like Venerable Swami described earlier. So we create more meaningful through the Bohemian dialogue method, and it's a powerful form of conversation that helps us to meet the dilemmas we face by transforming the consciousness of those who engage in it. When groups come together in dialogue and converse deeply on a topic, like we are doing today, we are learning to think together. This thinking together causes us to share in a common meaning pool, which lays the foundation for taking coherent action together. So these are some images of before the pandemic. Of course, we managed to work in person with children, primary, secondary, and higher education sectors, and for the last 2 years, we've been working very much online, different groups. We held a session for the World Economic Forum, youth members, UK police, educators, healthcare workers, and other professionals. So what are the results and conclusions? Very important. We don't have the time to present everything, but I'm hoping to do this during our virtual research symposium in June. We see this cultivation of natural qualities of the mind, which connects to the participant understanding something called the ripple effect, which relates to now the Sustainable Development Goals 3, 12, and 13 directly. And what I argue here is that the connection between the mental health crisis and the climate crisis are one. So both these things should be addressed together. I think that this disconnection we have with the environment has caused the mental health crisis, and vice versa. The World Health Organization is saying by 2030, mental ill health will be the biggest burden in Western countries. So this is going to again, will have a direct impact on the climate crisis. So the method of ICE, investigating, cultivating, and eco-contemplating will directly connect to cultivating mental, physical, and earth well-being, shaping the worldviews towards responsible consumption, and taking the right action towards the sustenance of life, and most importantly, taking care of our Mother Earth. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Sumanga, for that expose on such profound information and understanding, which I would love to hear, and I'm sure all of you in depth when we hear your total presentation at the VRS in June on World Environment Day. Thank you so much. So with your permission, may I initiate the Q&A? We have just a frame of about 15-20 minutes to go through the Q&A. If there are any participants who would like to ask a question from any of the panelists or to share a comment on what was presented, please be kind enough to raise your hand and unmute your mic when you speak. Venerable Dharma Jiva had to step aside for a continuation of a discussion he was doing. He's in the middle of a retreat. So I would like to introduce Venerable Chandarathana, who is going to join us for the Q&A until Venerable Dharma Jiva joins us. Venerable Chandarathana is an experienced teacher. He's the deputy abbot of Nisarnavanaya Monastery, and he's been teaching school children, adults, monks, and lots of yogis mindfulness and the 4 foundations of mindfulness meditation practices. So that's a brief introduction to Venerable Venerable Chandarathana. Sorry. So, are there any participants who would like to ask a question from any one of us? Yes. Could I know who that participant is, please? Yeah, could you please ask your question? Please introduce yourself and ask the question.
Jasnica Klara Matic, Equilibrium Global Platform for Sustainable Peace and Development. We are actually thinking that everybody has his place and his role in this creation, and that our role is to help him to find that place. We are all talking the same thing, I think, but sometimes we use different technology and terminology. So I would try in brief to tell what I mean in my language using my technology and terminology. We actually think that 2 perceptions of reality in today's world exist. One is though beliefs, primarily so-called secular and conventional beliefs, which limit our perception of reality in the way to do that we everything seen in the frame of time and place pattern. And this is the way why people think that they are disconnected from their environment and they are including other people. But the other perception of reality, it is the perception of reality that all religions and spiritual practice are actually doing. And this is the perception we are our heart and our intuition, unlike the first perception, which is based on logical thinking. And I think this is the great time and great place for religious and spiritual organization, because they naturally know and practice for thousands of years how practically enter in this state of mind which presumes our connection with everything that exists in the pattern of no time, no place. This is here and now. And my question is actually already answered, because you show me many projects and many programs working on that way. But it is the question whether some global framework, which is global framework, is creating in a way to show us what kind of limiting beliefs prevent us to adopt fully SDGs at first, then human rights, then environmental and other related regulations, and also ethic rules, because all of them offer us that reference which is actually natural for religions and spirituality. And in this phase of human existence, focus is on showing people that they do something wrong and to punish them for that. But the role must be something else, this is actually education and practical training which will help them to know what correct, let's say correct, maybe it is not a good term, but I have it on disposal now, to show them what beliefs affect their attitude and their behavior and how to behave in a correct way. This means to find a whole a list or whole scale of global, regional and local beliefs that affect what is happening to in the field of peace and in the field of relationship between human beings and environment. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jasnika, for that. Dr. Yard, may I please get permission from you to have an extra 5 minutes, at least to allow 1 or 2 additional questions? I know we have come to the end of our allocated time. Is that all right by you? Great. Could we have any other participants? Please make your question brief. If it's a comment, please make it quite succinct. But if there is a specific question you want to ask any of the panelists, please be kind enough to mention who you want it answered by. Is there anybody who has raised the hand?
I don't know how to raise the hands here.
Yes. Yes, sir. May I please go ahead? Can you introduce yourself briefly and then ask the question?
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, very well.
All right. Thank you very much. I'm Jean-Claude Lobamukole from Dominicans for Justice and Peace. First of all, I would like to appreciate this initiative of Faith for Earth and also what has been shared here. My question is, we as religious bodies or faith have also been accused of abusing the earth or human rights. How can we how can we work with that kind of past, and how can we address it as we move forward to take good care of the creation? Thank you.
If I'm to understand you correctly, we have been accused of abusing the earth over the years. So with that background, what can we do to move forward in relation to the movement that we are speaking about? Did I understand you correct, sir?
Exactly, abusing the earth and human rights as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. May I invite Venerable Rinpoche to make some comments on that, please, if you don't mind? You have to unmute, Venerable sir. Right.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you. Well, you know, this is something I think it is important to understand that we human beings, you know, because of our negative emotions, do things, lots of things, which is not positive, which is not right. And sometimes we do it in the name of religion. But when you do it in the name of religion, many times, if you look into the teachings of the founder of the religion, it says the opposite. So therefore, you know, anything that is done by somebody who kind of holds the name or holds a post in a certain religious institution or wears the dress, and the actual teaching and the actual the actual teachings and the practice of that religion, I think we need to learn to separate, because I can do something wrong because I'm just an individual. But because I wear a dress of a Buddhist monk, people say that, oh, these Buddhists are doing that. But actually, it's not the Buddhists doing, it's I am doing. And because I'm wearing this dress, I'm, the whole Buddhism is blamed for that. There are lots of things of this going on, and sometimes in groups and in kind of so what I think we have to understand is also in the future that we have to be very careful to really not always join these things together, that anybody in the name of religion or anyone who is wearing the dress of the religion is doing something, is actually doing for that religion. And this has to be very careful that even the followers themselves have to see, because if I say that, we Buddhists are in danger and so we have to fight against it, then many Buddhists will come and, maybe join me, but maybe it's not the point. The point may be something else. So therefore, I think it is very important, and I think it's in a way little bit connected with the comment before that, that there's kind of talking about the kind of scientific or, the way and the faith way. Now this is, I think, important, that all of us have to think, have to analyze, have to, use the most kind of the best possible of our understanding and our mind to see things, what is right and what is not right, and what is positive and not, and things like that. And then we have to, follow that path. We should not just believe because somebody said this, and not just believe that it's written in the book and things like that. That's what. But at the same time, we also have to be very careful that we do not, hold our views so, with so much attachment that we cannot open our mind to anything else, and we do not respect each other. Because however good my philosophy is or my view is, that is my way of thinking and my way of experiencing, and there could be other ways, there could be other truths, there could be other ways of saying and other ways of describing it and things like that. So therefore, if we have these two things together, that I use the best of my mind and my wisdom, my analysis to see what is right and what is not, and follow according to my conviction, but I also should be very careful to respect others with different opinions and different. I think that would be the path that we need to follow.
Thank you very much, Venerable Rinpoche. I'm just going to ask one question from Venerable Chandraratana before I hand over to Kumanga to finish off the Q&A. Venerable Chandraratana, I'm going back to something that Venerable Dharmajiva said. He referred to the internal triple crisis when we were talking about the triple planetary crisis, as it is conventionally known. And Venerable Rinpoche also mentioned clinging to views. So could you just draw on the comments Venerable Dhammajiva made in relation to the internal triple crisis, conceit, views, and greed, and how our proliferation on those could impact the environment in a positive or negative way, and how you feel we could adjust our lives and our thinking patterns in accordance for protecting the environment. Venerable Chandaratana, could you? I hope you heard the question, Venerable sir.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
You're breaking up a little. Yeah, you're breaking up a bit, but we can hear you. Yes.
I heard. Can you hear me?
Yes, it's breaking up.
So as you mentioned, can you hear a little bit better now? I think there's a connection issue. Yeah, yes. There seems to be a connection issue. So as he mentioned, now actually we were always sometimes discussing about the external crisis, but internally when we are thinking about ourselves, how we being shifted from ourselves. So most of us discussed how we have to be mindful, how we have to look at our mind, what are the thoughts going on, what are our intentions, what are our attitudes. So those kinds of thinking, those kinds of reflections are quite interesting and quite valid. And if we go a little deeper, so there are three routes. So according to the Buddha and the Dhamma mentioned, so one is the route of craving, on which our thoughts are being going out. Another route is what we call the conceit. Through that conceit route, there are another conceit stream that we can say. Again, another kind of stream is going out. And the other one is the kind of a view that we sometimes strongly hold. So with that view, that certain amount of thoughts are going out. So when we are sort of overwhelmed by these three categories of thinking, so ultimately we become kind of a victim of this whole process. Actually, we may be the one starting the process, but when the whole thinking process catching the momentum, ultimately that thinking process become more powerful and we become kind of a victim. So we are becoming helpless, and ultimately we are being carried on by a kind of a vicious cycle, and we may act inappropriately. We may be doing something inappropriately, and because we are being driven by that vicious cycle. So then actually the external crisis may happen, because we are being driven and we are becoming kind of victims, kind of slaves to those inner kind of streams. So if we are to really give a kind of a better solution, therefore we have to look back. We have to come to ourselves. So as all of us have discussed, so there we are, rather than, before these vicious streams are going out and making a huge damage, so we have to stop ourselves. So we have to, in a way, check ourselves. We have to do a kind of a self-regulation in that sense. So on the other side, we can say we have to have a fair amount of self-awareness. So that self-awareness helps us to recognize these different kinds of streams going out through our mind, and we can stop them at their early stages. So that is where the mindfulness practice I find quite interesting, because mindfulness practice helps us to recognize these ways of thinking at their very early stages. Then we don't need to worry about we are going and doing kind of a damage to the environment, doing kind of a damage to the others, doing some sort of a transgression of whatever the precepts or whatever the other laws in the country or the society, because we ourselves are able to recognize these streams at their early stages, and then we can operate within our capacity. Because internally I am aware of what I am thinking, what are the way of thoughts going on, and those can be related to those three streams, either through the craving or either through the conceit, or either through the kind of a different view, and I can check whether they are really useful, whether I am going to be a victim in the future if I am continuing this thinking. So likewise, this kind of a inner reflection and understanding this way of thinking at its very early stage is help us to support in the external sense as well. So that's what I like to share with you in this respect.
Thank you, Venerable Chandraratna Thera. Very, very important to address the three doors. Thank you so much for sharing wisdom with us. Now, to close our session, from behalf of Mindfulness for Earth, thank you very much to Dr. Iyad, Azmira, Ian, and the team behind organizing this entire 10 days of dialogue. And we wish you all the very best for your conclusion sessions, I think, happening tomorrow. We would like to also invite participants to, again, check out our website. We will type it very quickly on the chat window so that you can join us for our virtual research symposium in June. So may I please hand over to Dr. Iyad to conclude our session. Dr. Iyad with us?
Thank you very much, Dr. Komanga. Thanks to all of the speakers. I mean, I'm truly speechless, and I can't find the words to close such a wonderful session, such an inspirational feeling that I have, and what I have learned from all the speakers. What I would say is that this is important, what's happening. Let's continue our partnership together. Let's take this to higher levels. Let's keep mentioning mindfulness and our spiritual connections in everywhere we go, to make this a practice on a daily basis. If we are not mindful of what's happening around us and mindful of our responsibilities, we will not solve the problems that we are facing. So my heartfelt appreciation to each and every one of you. And as we said before, this is only the start, and it's a process, it's a program that will lead us to further more global work together. So thank you very much and all the best.
Thank you very much. Thank you.